Welcome to 28.5 Women's Basketball, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played basketball at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and don't forget to follow, download, and listen to give an assist and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode. Hey, Sid. Hey, Sid. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Becca? Another episode.
Another one in the books. You know, this season comes with highs and lows, as does the amount of info and games to touch on. So I know we have a pretty slower week this week, maybe not as much of a punch. We don't have 5 games to dig into and debrief. And the one game we really wanted to dig into that we were all excited for kind of turned was a little womp. So we'll touch base on that. But we're going to break this down into 2 halves and then a quick overtime with some in the news items. So first half, we're going to have Sid dig into the Wee Bat Pat week, a great week that I honestly extends more than just a week, right? But it'll touch on that. The second half, I'll jump into some of the Texas versus Maryland game. And then in our quick overtime is just going to be some in the news. So let's get rolling.
Let's do this. So the first half is all about the legendary Pat Summitt and it being in the middle right now of We Back Pat Week. So the Southeastern Conference, in cooperation with its 16 member institutions, announced the 13th annual We Back Pat Week, which is what's going on right now. So it's a week-long initiative that's focused on bringing awareness and recognition to the Pat Summitt Foundation, a fund of East Tennessee Foundation, and its fight against Alzheimer's disease. So for those who don't know, Pat did lose her life ultimately to Alzheimer's disease. And it took her pretty fast. I think it came on fast. And before we all knew it, it took her. So it's a vicious disease that affects so many. And I think what she's been able to set up here with the Pat Summitt Foundation and with Tyler, her son, they both founded it together when they founded the Pat Summitt Foundation, November 27th of 2011. I think what they've been able to do for the awareness and raising funds around Alzheimer's has been pretty amazing. So Pat was diagnosed with early onset dementia, Alzheimer's type, at the age of 59. So when we think back to what Pat was able to accomplish and to have this disease take set when she's 59 years old, I mean, it's amazing. That's not that old, right, really, when you stop and think about it. So, and with it being such a crippling disease, it was obviously very devastating for the Lady Vol family, but also devastating for women's basketball and women's sports in general, because in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s and 2000s, Pat Summitt was a staple in the game. She was huge with getting women's basketball on the map and really preached that we should be on TV as much as the men, and we should have, Title IX be a thing and as many scholarships as the men. And what was cool, my freshman year and sophomore year, we had more attendance than the men on a lot of games. And
that's awesome.
That's a testament to Pat and what she built at the University of Tennessee. And I could go on and on and on. I mean, she won 8 national championships. I was on the team when she had her 1,000th win. Like, there's just so many things that she accomplished individually, but really what she accomplished in total for women's basketball and women's sports, I mean, really has transcended any leader in our game. Words do not do it justice, what she put forward and all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. Right? It's not an easy thing to accomplish what she accomplished. We all know, and I know especially, how dedicated and how much time went into each and every win at the University of Tennessee. And she used to tell us as players, I have not and will not score a point for the University of Tennessee. So she used to say all the time, you win with people. And she really did that, right? Like, she wasn't the one putting the ball through the hoop, but the way that she led and encouraged and enabled people to be successful, they ultimately put the ball through the hoop and got the stops on defense and did all the things, right? She preached the rebounding, the defense, the free throws, and then the offense. And what she put forward may never be matched on the women's side for women's sports. So big shout out to Pat. And it's awesome to see that We Back Pat week go strong. Like I said, it's the 13th annual week of this. And what a great way to raise funds and awareness for the Alzheimer's disease. I am not surprised that her legacy lives on in such a positive way. And really, it's fun for me each week because you see Pat and they show a lot of the clips on commercial breaks and they really talk about her and what she meant to the game. And that's fun for me. It brings back good memories for sure.
You know what's interesting is I learned so much, right? You see Pat Summitt on TV growing up, obviously her, Gino, Coach McGraw, those were the ones that you were hoping to get recruited to. You were watching anytime there was a game between one of the three, it was a rivalry game. But Pat Summitt was someone just, even when I was littler, I would watch the games and it was just so exciting to see. And I don't think at the time for me it was male versus female, but it was just how she carried herself that left such an impact and a confidence and an aura, right? She was calm, but she was intense and she was detailed and matter of fact. And honestly, Sid, I see so much of her in you. And I know a lot of the things that you say, you probably don't even realize, but in our clinics and when we're coaching our team, you are 1,000%. That's why I was smiling so much when you just mentioned something, because it's absolutely things I've heard you say in clinics and workouts with our team. So it's amazing just to see that full circle go forward, right? Pat Summitt coaching her team and then her team going out and coaching the youth and impacting players even nowadays. I think it's also just amazing to have her sprinkled and continue to be around. And I absolutely see that in you. I remember going to, I think it was in Indianapolis. We went with my high school coach and a few of the girls. We went to go see the Final Four. And it was the first time, I think I had to be a freshman or a sophomore, maybe eighth grade or freshman. It was the open like practice style of the Final Four. So it was like people were in there, people taking pictures. She was conducting, like a shoot around, an open shoot around. And then afterward, we all waited in line and we got like a Tennessee ball signed by all the players. Shira Eli was there. I just thought she was so awesome in her play, mal-tempered, but like dominant. And it was just an experience, right? And to be able to have Pat Summitt sign a basketball, and then how crazy is it that years later, like not like tons, but like for you to be on our AAU team and then you get the opportunity to play there, I just kind of full circle, because as I'm coaching with you and doing these things with you, the things you say, and you're such a teacher of the game. Sid is super X's and O's, very technical. Is the best at breaking things down for players and kids to understand the why, and I think that's super important. And I just think it's awesome. Like I'm learning through you from Pat. So props to you, Sid, because you're definitely carrying that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you embrace Muffet McGraw too. I think that's what makes us unique when we're together coaching.
Yeah,
right?
I'm over there stomping my heels, stomping my heels on the sideline.
Teaching the Princeton offense, and if one or two kids picks it up, then they're going to be making the right reads. So, yep. And that's all Pat, right? I know she's the best leader I've ever been around, and I was blessed to be able to do that for all 4 years of college. And you talk about the Final Four and getting your ball signed and the autographs, and I am not even kidding when I say she would stop and sign every single autograph, and every single autograph was legible. You could read Pat Summitt.
Yeah.
Very clear. Not a lot of people know this, but Pat Summitt had pretty bad arthritis and literally had like bumps on the back of her hand.
Oh, wow.
So I know she would sit there and sign a lot of autographs and her hands would start to hurt, right? But you could still read every single one. And she would tell us when we had autograph lines, every single autograph should be legible for these kids who wait in line. They should know
awesome.
when the ball goes through, who signed it, what number you have, all that stuff. So I thought that was a good by example. She lived it and breathed it. And so we did that too, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I talk about her being a great leader. A lot of my memories with her, yes, there's a ton of on the court, in practice, traveling as a team, in halftime locker rooms, in pre-games, and everything she would write on the board to prepare for games and all that good stuff. But I honestly remember the most being at her house. She had a pool house that we would all frequent and it was fun, right? We would have team meals out there and we would go in the pool house and we would play pool and Pop-A-Shot and all the different arcade games that she had out there. And we just had fun, and she would make meals for us. She was a big cook. She loved to cook, and her food, she would teach the managers would cook along with her, and her food was amazing. I would do,
Really?
oh yeah, I would do anything right now to have some of her asparagus casserole. It was so good. I
Oh
had to
my
have
gosh.
like Ritz crackers or something on the top of it, but it
Mm-hmm.
was phenomenal. She had such good food. So it was fun for us because we would go play and then they would cook this big meal and then we would eat, So we
Yeah.
would have the selection show there. So the ESPN cameras would be there at her house. And it just was, those are the fun memories that I remember. And of course, there are great basketball stories too, but it just speaks to the leader that she was so welcoming to have us to her house. And we had that family feel away from home. And I just thought that that was super special to be able to do things like that. So Pat Summitt, you are the greatest, and we miss you to this day. And so proud of everything that she's been able to do. And We Back Pat is 1 week that we do out there, but really she's intertwined throughout every season of women's basketball. So pretty special what she was able to achieve.
Absolutely. It's hard to jump into our second half after you follow such a great first half, but we're going to try. So, jumping over to our second half, we're going to talk about the Texas versus Maryland game. This one had a lot of hype. This was Texas coming in at number 7, Maryland being the number 8. You just kind of expected a great game, a great atmosphere. We talked about that last episode. Like all the stars aligned for this to be quite the showdown. And honestly, it was kind of like the previous week when Texas played South Carolina and Texas didn't really show up. They didn't shoot well and South Carolina just stomped them. This is exactly the type of game this was. So I'm going to start with the final just so we're all aware of what we're talking about. Texas ended up winning 89-51. And honestly, it could have been more. I think they kind of took the pedal off a bit, but it was all in all rough. This was I'm going to set the stage. Maryland was 16-1. They had only lost to USC. Texas had just lost to South Carolina and then previously lost to Notre Dame at Notre Dame. So you have two teams here who have over 15 wins apiece, right? Like this is set up for the ultimate competition type style game. I felt like this could have also almost been like an NCAA game. Bree McDaniel for Maryland was out with it. She tore her ACL in the last game. She was their third leading scorer, averaging 10.6 points per game and third best on the team in the field goal percentage with over 50% respectfully. This game as a whole was just super messy. I mean, like, it was almost as if Maryland had a lid on the basket. Remember those drills where they put the bubble on the basket and
Oh
they're throwing
yeah,
it?
old school.
Those old school rebounding drills, and you're like, oh, the bubble, I hate the bubble. I felt like the game was played that way. And why do I say that? Halftime, the score was Texas 48, Maryland 18. Now, Sid, let's just talk about that first half, right? Maryland only scored 6 points in the second quarter. So remember, we've talked other games and any type of quarter you have where it's single digits, that it's gonna be a rough game. You can't have a quarter that's just you're not scoring as much as you need to match the intensity of the other team. But to have 18 points at halftime as a number 8 ranked team, this was hard to watch, honestly, from probably the middle of the first quarter. What were your thoughts on the first half?
Yeah, I was at one point talking to the TV saying, get out of that zone because
Yeah.
I just thought Texas had their way with it, possession over possession. And the style that you and I play, I know when we coach, like when a defense isn't working,
Mm-hmm.
you mix it up. And I
Yeah.
just felt like they stayed in that zone for a lot of the game. And Texas was getting a lot of short corner, easy jumpers. And when you've got Booker on your team who is capable of really knocking down a lot of those mid-range type looks, I mean, she just exploited it like crazy. They didn't really have an answer for that. And Maryland just all in all, to your point, there was a lid on the bucket for sure. They just look so flat, like the flattest I think I've seen a team play.
Yeah.
And that's rough, right? Because I think the stage was set. You mentioned it's number 7 versus number 8. It's on a Monday night. It's in conference play right now, but this is a non-conference matchup. It's for the Coretta Scott King Classic. So there was a big game before it, right? Baylor played UCLA, which is a big game, and then this one followed it up, and should have been the first game. I don't know if it was that bad.
Yeah.
And you talk about lid on the basket. Maryland went 0 for 7 from the 3-point line. Like they just 0%. I think that's the first time this season, and we've looked at a lot of box scores that I've seen just flat out 0. There.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And one thing to add, we mentioned Bree McDaniel being out for Maryland. Sellers for Maryland also went out in the second quarter with a right knee injury. She tried to come back in for a minute, but couldn't continue, went back to the training room, came out in street clothes. So, 2 starters for Maryland being out and down for the count, that obviously affects things and changes your style of play and everything. Just, it's your flow. It's your go-to and the confidence that you have. At one point, the largest lead that Texas had was 40. The end of the game, let's just jump to it. We can talk about the second half and dig in a bit, but Booker finished with 28 points. She had 20 in the first half alone. She was 9 for 11, so she kind of cooled off in the second half there. Probably didn't play as much. Oldacre, who I just think Oldacre is a gritty, consistent, go-to must-have player for Texas. She comes in, even in the first half, she was in there, and I saw her just getting offensive board after offensive board, and I was like, oh gosh, please don't tell me this is going to be another South Carolina game where they can't score. But obviously it flipped there. But she comes off the bench, gets in a bit of foul trouble, but has 15 to be the second leading scorer. You absolutely have to have that. Maryland had Smichael with 15 points. She was the only player in double figures. So obviously when McDaniels is out and Sellers gets hurt, Smichael has to carry the load, and it wasn't enough, right? So a couple more key stats that I just wanted to mention. Texas made 37 field goals. That is 5 less than Maryland even attempted in the game. So it wasn't that we're talking about makes versus attempts. That is huge. And then Maryland's they finished the game with 27 turnovers. So that's the ball game. I mean, they were lucky that they got 23 free throw attempts because they were able to make 17. So they were about 74% from the free throw line. But that was their go-to. They made 17 free throws and they also made 17 baskets. I mean, it was rough. It was really rough. Great win for Texas. Way to bounce back after South Carolina, but tough one for Maryland, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's a piece of the humble pie for me, right? Because I picked Maryland as maybe that dark horse to make a Final Four this year. And it's one game. There's been several other games where Maryland has looked pretty darn good. So I think we talk about this a lot. You get blown out. Texas got blown out last week, almost equal stature to South Carolina, and they turn around and handle business against a really good Maryland team. How does Maryland respond here? I mean, one nice thing, if you look at this, is it wasn't a conference game. Mm-hmm. And so it's not a loss in the conference. Do they pick it up and now win a couple key conference games? We'll see. I mean, I think they do have to respond. They've got some injuries now that they're going to have to work through. I think that's going to hurt them. So they might not be the same team.
And they have UCLA coming up this Sunday. So I think that'll be a good measurement stick, if you will. Again, obviously having 2 starters out, that's going to affect them. They're going to have to go to the drawing board and adjust some stuff. But I do want to highlight our only remaining undefeated teams are UCLA and LSU. Are you shocked? Are you not shocked? How are you feeling about this?
I think UCLA makes a ton of sense. I mean, we talk about Kiki Rice, we talk about Lauren Betts. Lauren Betts over the weekend now has the single game block record at UCLA. She had 9 blocks in a game. I mean, she's just a beast, right? And they have a really good coach over there. You can tell they've built this program that embodies winning and this winning culture. And I think they're capable of winning out if they want to, honestly. I mean, they're that good. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's very tough to do that, especially with the parity that we're seeing this year. So I don't think it'll happen, but it could. And then when I look at LSU, that's the one that I'm a little bit shocked on because
For sure.
their non-conference was so weak, and now they're in conference, but they're winning these conference games. And granted, they've got a handful of tough ones still to go. So we're going to see how they weather that storm. It's a testament to Kim Mulkey and the players that she has. Morrow is one of the best players in the country. Flau'jae is an excellent player. I mean, they've got the personnel, so that part of it makes sense. It's just a lot of games to have to win in a row.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm going to pivot, and Notre Dame hasn't played anyone news and noteworthy as of lately, right? They're kind of on the back end of conference play where they just need to take care of business. But I just wanted to mention, we have all these games that we have so much hype around, even the USC versus Maryland game, the South Carolina versus Texas game, and it just always seems to fall a bit flat. And I don't know, right? We've talked about the grind of conference, and that's real, folks. Like, that's a thing. It happens. Travel,
Absolutely.
prep, it becomes mundane, and it's so important, but you're like, it wears on you. I just want to give a ton of credit to Notre Dame for having those tough games against UConn, USC, and Texas. Number one, super early in their season. Number two, kind of back to back almost, right? And then number three, for like showing up and making it a game. None of those games were a blowout or one-sided by any means. And obviously I'm thrilled that they were able to get 3 wins. But I just want to highlight those were 3 competitive games from both sides. Those were great games to see top-ranked teams going at it. And you never felt like, well, it was a game when they were warming up, right? It just, these other games have kind of fallen flat. So I'm hoping we can get some bounce back here, especially coming into the end of conference play, conference tournament where, it's time to turn up. So NCAA seeds, you can get good ones, right?
Yeah, how amazing would it be if it was South Carolina versus Notre Dame in the national championship? Has there ever been a better national championship matchup when you talk about Notre Dame's backcourt and Hannah Hidalgo, Olivia Miles? You've got Leah Tu King, who's come on this year for them, transfer in, who's been just amazing. Maddie Westbelt. They all stay healthy. Like, Notre Dame's team is absolutely stacked. And then South Carolina, they've got the experience, they've got the depth, they've got Dawn on their side who's been there, done that. I just think that would be such a great matchup. Not to knock UCLA. I think they're obviously they're ranked number 1 right now. They're very capable of being in that. There's a few teams that are capable of being in that national championship game. That's the matchup that I want to see, though, selfishly.
The people that make it happen. That'd be pretty prime time, especially with Dawn Staley and all that she's done for the women's game, making sure, we're earning our piece because we deserve it, right? With NIL and just overall visibility. So I think it would absolutely be prime time and an awesome game. Obviously with Notre Dame winning, but you know what I mean.
There you go. Once a part of the Irish, always a part of the Irish. Right, Becca?
Yes.
All right, let's jump into our overtime. It's a relatively quick overtime here. This one, when I saw this on social media, at first I was like, is this fake? And then I did some digging and I'm like, nope. Okay, USA Today just did an article on it. ESPN just did an article on it, and so forth. And I'm going, oh no, this is real. Like, we're reporting on this. This might be a thing. So the headline is that Maverick Carter is advising a $5 billion effort to start a new basketball league.
Here we go.
Let's think about this for a second, right? We just started Unrivaled, which has been amazing, right? We had the opening week, and I know we're going to be highlighting Unrivaled coming up here and what we've seen so far. But that's been a great addition for the women's game. Now we're talking about a new league for men and women. They're not going to play co-ed or anything, but they're talking about doing 6 men's teams and 6 women's teams. So let me get into some of the details and kind of read through the bullets here, and I think it'll start making more sense. So Maverick Carter is LeBron James's business manager. He's been enlisted as an advisor by a group of investors seeking to raise, again, $5 billion to form an international basketball league that would serve as a rival to the NBA. This is what the sources are telling ESPN. This is also confirms a story that was first reported by Bloomberg. So again, we're talking some credible sources here. The group, which includes multiple private equity funds, is looking to form a league consisting of 6 men's teams and 6 women's teams, playing games around the world. which sounds super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important mentioning here, although Carter, who has served as a producer on more than one of James's TV and movie projects, he's closely tied to the Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James, but it's allegedly reported that LeBron James is not involved in the efforts with this new league, which I think is probably smart for now, right? Because he's such a pivotal player in the NBA. But it is interesting to think if they did this and they picked 6 different cities around the world, some of the article had New York as one. I saw Madrid out there. I saw Paris out there. I just think it's kind of cool for some of these international fans to be able to, go to these cities and watch some of these games, but also for us to be able to travel maybe and see some games overseas. It just seems like a really cool thing. And again, I look at this, there's going to be 6 women's teams also. So it's another way for women's basketball to expand. And for some of these players, hopefully, if they launch this thing correctly, to get paid what they're worth a little bit here.
I'm just going to say,
another opportunity.
If this rolls out and you have Unrivaled rolling, the WNBA has some heat on it. And maybe it's rightfully so and about time, but it's obviously a league that's been around for a while that you want it to be better. You want it to be better for the players, for the fans. So I'm just going to say, and I'm sure everybody, even players in the WNBA, they better wake up because, there's money to be made. And honestly, this 8-week max of Unrivaled season, players are making more there than they do in the WNBA without a doubt. I would say almost 80% of them are making more in this 2-month league with the possibility of winning more in one-on-one tournament. You know what I mean? It's just, there's so many opportunities. It's pretty crazy. So there's a bullseye on the WNBA and they better step it up. That is for sure.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I like it. I think if for once it's putting pressure on the WNBA, like we're talking about for decades now, the WNBA has been a little stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got players like Caitlin Clark last year that spice it up a little bit. And so there's been some players throughout the years and teams throughout the years that have drawn more fans in and whatnot. But this could be potentially big again.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it might be funded correctly right alongside the men.
Yeah.
Not necessarily saying it's going to be equal. That part I don't know.
And it's interesting because you don't know so the overseas season that women normally go is from August to March, April. So it's on the outside of WNBA. That's pretty much, May to July. But if they were to, you could only imagine right now, players who have chosen to do Unrivaled instead of go overseas, I just can't fathom those leagues overseas and those teams that, you have some of them making millions of dollars. Brittany Griner, Diana Taurasi, those players are making millions and they have chefs, private chefs, drivers, apartments. They got it all worked out over there. I can only imagine right now with those players not playing overseas and the hit it's taking to their team and their pocket and their opportunity. Some of these teams are religious in winning league after league, year after year. It's a big deal. Euro Cup travel, that's big time. So with players choosing to stay here, specifically these top 36 women, right, to do Unrivaled instead of go abroad, I think it's only going to continue to raise the stakes. And wouldn't that be some shit if the overseas league took the time that the WNBA was? Because it'd be shorter. It wouldn't be as long. They would understand that they're here in the States supporting Unrivaled. And who knows? I'm brainstorming here because I know there's 2 to 3 WNBA players that get picked up on those big teams in Europe, Madrid, places like that. And they're earning millions of dollars a piece to be on that team. And now I'm thinking about those investors, those team owners. What are they doing right now? Not having a Kayla McBride who has just won how many Euro Cup championships. It's interesting. So I'm just going to sprinkle those little pieces out there because I think it's an ever evolving situation where I think for a while it was like you mentioned, the WNBA was stagnant. Overseas was kind of the way to go. And now with all these leagues and a possibility of this, it could be a mix-up, a shake-up for sure.
Yeah. And Becca, tell us about your experience a little bit, right? Because you played overseas. What are the fans like? This is what this means, right? If international like this, there is an entire international fan base that maybe we don't really get exposed to here in the US. So like, what is that fandom like over there and the feel overseas?
Okay. So I didn't go to like Italy or France. Obviously, those are some I would have loved to play in Greece, but every team has pros and cons, right? So my first season I was in Finland and it was very cold. I was in Kotka, Finland. It was in the south. And we had a men's team. There were some American men that were there too. Again, you have 2 to 3 per team. So you have 2 to 3 men, 2 to 3 women, and you just kind of form a bond. But I will say it's intense. It's business. It's very much you're replaceable if you're not hitting your numbers, what you're expecting, if you start losing games. In Finland, I was the only person that was there from the start to the finish of a whole season. And that was based on whether girls were injured or they just replaced them. So we went through 6 other Americans on like rotation in
Wow,
and
that's
out.
kind of
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
cutthroat. I mean, and a lot of times there's girls that are on the national team, like the Finnish national team. So they speak English, so you're able to communicate with them. But my coach, I mean, it was choppy, right? There's certain things you can tell, which is why I'm really big on body language, because I'm like, if you're talking about me and you're really mad at that shot I just took, like, you know what I mean? There's just things you can pick up on. So Finland was fun. It was my first learning curve. It was my first time that far away from home, a 13-hour flight, a 5-hour drive to an airport. I mean, it was real, right? You learn a lot about yourself. I wasn't as privileged when you go to the WNBA. Even if you make a training camp, you automatically are like in the cream of the crop prospects. Everybody wants you if you have that on your name. So after that, I was able to play in Puerto Rico for a couple seasons, which was super nice, obviously. Beach, basketball, beer. I mean, like there were just things that were
Right.
awesome and a lot of fun. And I got to play with one of our AAU teammates and then my college teammate, Melissa Leckleitner. So that was a ton of fun. And the fans over there are rowdy, crazy. And it's a lot of it's because the men's leagues already set that precedent of being loud, intense. I mean, you go to different cities and it's like the coach's grandma's sister has some beef with the coach's cousin's aunt and they're mad and it's like you better win and it's like oh, okay. So it was just intense and it's awesome because Puerto Rico is a smaller island where you just got to kind of travel around. So you saw those people when you're say you go into San Juan and you're shopping, stuff like that. But then I went to Ukraine, and Ukraine was my last overseas stint. I actually replaced somebody at Christmas. So the Puerto Rican season is from August to November-ish. So then I was home for December, and then I replaced somebody at Christmas time over in Ukraine. Man, you guys think it's cold here? It was freezing there. I mean, it was like Finland, but I don't know why I picked all these really cold places. But you could tell that was a team that was just the expectations were set. They were league champs year after year. Two-a-days were a thing that we did often. And honestly, I was over there when Russia invaded the first time. So our season was paused just for safety, obviously, and just trying to update your family, letting them know you're good, things like that. But the ball kept bouncing. That's for sure. Like I said, we had two-a-days. I think we only lost a handful of games. We ended up winning, which was great. Again, you have your owners, your management. They come in, it's Women's Day. They're giving you flowers. It's a whole experience, and they know you're away from home and you're probably homesick. So we had photo shoots to make us happy, like things that one-on-one, what do you like to do? Well, I like coffee. So I got to like go actually like pour my own style type coffee, like pour over the beans and stuff. So it was fun. It was definitely a learning experience. I think I learned more about myself when I was over there, what you can handle, how you can push yourself. It's more mentally than anything because I think college basketball physically puts you through a lot, but over there it was definitely the mental part, and I learned a lot, got through it, survived, and advanced, and here we are today. But it's a different vibe over there, that's for sure. They're intense. They have their diehards. You have your go-to fans in college. Only they're traveling like 10 hours on a bus, and there's 4 of them following the team bus as you're going to your road game. So diehards loved it, and it was a great experience for sure.
Yeah, that's super awesome. And what an awesome experience. And you got to go to 3 different different places, right? Different
For sure.
cultures, different type of people, I can only imagine. So that's like such an awesome experience. And if we think about the WNBA and women's basketball as we know it here in the States and what we've been able to do in the Olympics, we truly do dominate, right? I mean,
Hmm.
France was pretty good in the Olympics this year, but
Yeah.
it's never like the US so far, like year after year, Olympics after Olympics, we really put out the gold medal, right? And sometimes we win pretty handedly. So I think it's interesting though, because I think internationally some of the players have really gotten better over the years. So now if they expand this to a global league, what does that ultimately mean for talent? Does the international talent ultimately get better? Does it stay the same and the US is still dominant because we play it since we're little kids? Like it'll just be interesting over time if this league takes off. Does it expand talent globally a little bit
Hmm.
more? I think that's like an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off that, the reason France was super good, right? They had a few folks that were from the WNBA that grew up and right. So you can apply for different types of citizenship if you have the roots going back to the family. And you know what? One team that just comes to mind, we've talked about USF, Southern Florida. They have 11 or 14 players from overseas. So it's going to be interesting to see where those players end up because it could be in the WNBA, it could be playing in the Olympics, or it could be having an amazing career overseas in their hometown and we don't even really get to see it or have visibility to it. So it's a very unique situation and not everybody has it, right? To be able to say you have roots that tie you abroad and then you'll be able to go play for that national team. I think it's pretty cool.
That is super cool.
So the last basketball piece we want to add is Paige Beckers surpassed 2,000 points in her career. So UConn played Seton Hall last week and they won by 60. But why we're highlighting it is she reached 2,000 points in the 102nd game, breaking the program record of 108 games that was set by, who do you think?
I'm gonna go with Diana Taurasi.
Oh, I would think that too. The Maya Moore.
Okay, Maya Moore. All right. She's our class.
Yeah, I feel like they're one
Yeah.
and the same. Like you just have those UConn greats, those guards. I know we've talked about their posts, but man, Diana, Sue, Maya, Paige, I mean, they're all really good at what they do. Let's be real. So congrats to Paige just breaking over that 2,000 points for her career and doing it the fastest.
Way to go, Paige. Chasing that GOAT status. Maybe one day
Right?
we'll see.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap today's episode. So in our first half, we talked all about Pat Summitt and We Back Pat Week. Second half, we talked about the Texas versus Maryland. And literally in our notes, I have whomp, 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 because it was
It
a
was
blowout.
womp, womp, womp.
All Texas on that one. And then in the news, we talked about Maverick Carter advising that $5 billion effort to start a new basketball league, a new global league that would entail 6 men's teams and 6 women's teams. So we'll see what happens there. And we look forward to talking to you all in our next episode.
Don't forget to download, subscribe, send us questions on any of our socials. We're going to be recording a huddle here soon. So excited to get those questions answered and just looking forward to the fan interaction.
All right. Good stuff. Becca, talk to you soon.
See you, Sid. That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow and download on your preferred podcast platform to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts where you can send us questions that may be selected for our Team Huddle Q&A episodes. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.